And let's see. Oh, looks like we're live. Hey, everybody. It's JJ Conway. I hope you can hear and see me all right. I'm in a hotel in Beaumont, Texas. And it's been a really lovely family mini vacay. My husband had a judging engagement down here, judging gig down here, and we brought the whole family. You know, it's funny. We were teasing each other at dinner about how normally it's the family coming to my speaking engagement and making a little mini vacay out of it. And this year this trip, it's the other way around. The tables have turned. Mr. Man is in that role this time. And so I'm very excited about that. It's an adjustment, I'll tell you, because for me, I am very much somebody who likes to get the job done, and I enjoy my work. So when you enjoy your work, you don't need a vacation away from your work when you enjoy what you do. You know what I mean? Like, I love what I do to help people dump debt and build wealth and leave a legacy. I love what I do to help women, especially, take charge of their money and create multiple streams of income. I love doing that, and I love ministry. And so all those things that I spend my time doing, I'd say a good 90% of them are things I love to do. And then the ones that I don't love to do, like cleaning, I probably, I try to outsource that, or I just don't do it. But for the most part, when you have a life you love, when you've crafted a life that you love, you don't need a vacation from it. However, this has been a really nice little time. And one of the things that it was definitely a challenge for me as a mom was realizing that without my oldest son here, he's at camp, he's at his summer training this week to be a camp counselor out at Glen Lake. But without him here, it's like, okay, I'm not going to work while the boys play in the pool. I need to play in the pool with my son, my little one. So making that adjustment, like, this is no kidding going to be some time of rest. And we did family movie night after I broke my fast, and we had a wonderful lesson at the schooner. And then we swam. They swam while I was fasting. My husband and youngest, and then we did family movie night. And they're finishing family movie night, and I'm down here. I just watched like 20 multiples of Shrek the play. I didn't need to watch Shrek the movie, but that's what he wanted to watch. So that's what the little one wanted to watch. So anyway, I see that every time I touch the table, I'm shaking. If you can hear me, please let me know if my sound's okay, because A, I forgot my good camera that has the really good mic, and B, I don't know how well this setup is picking up. So if you could just give me some likes or loves if the sound is good, or some angries if the sound is not good. Hey, Sakisha Heilig, Dr. Heilig, how are you doing? I'm so happy to see you on. All right, so today we're going to talk about a couple things. It is Fireside Chat, where I answer, hey, Z Scott, the SEO queen. All right. We got a good cast of attendees tonight. Look, these ladies are going to help you get the job done. If you're trying to take your business to the next level, both of these ladies have something to help you do just that. All right. So today we're going to talk about a couple things. The first thing we're going to talk about is this week's tax sale. It was the Bossier tax certificate sale. And I'm going to talk about the properties, multiple properties I got for between $400 and $600, y'all. Ooh, yes. I'm so excited about that. Then we're going to talk about when you would want to use a prenup, and whether or not a prenup means that the person you're about to marry doesn't love you. I used to really believe that until I started having some stuff of my own. And then I was like, wait a second now. In fact, one of the guys that I dated for about 4 months when I first became single after the divorce and was healed up and ready to date again, one of the things that he liked about me is that I joked. I was joking. Okay. I didn't have anything. I was still climbing out of $845,000 of debt. All right. I didn't have anything, but we were at the table and he had millions. I didn't know it yet, but he was a multimillionaire. And he's the what you see most of the time in the United States, driving around that Honda hoopty, and you would never know how much money they had. Yeah, so we're on this date, and I joked about how, if I ever remarry, I'm going to have a very strong prenup. And that was one of the things that he really liked about me, because for him, it was like, oh, she's safe and she's secure and she's not after my money. And most guys aren't like that, I'll be honest with you. So we're not going to talk about the romantic side of it. We are going to talk about the prenup and whether or not, it's something you should enter a marriage where you do. And again, a lot of these answers are going to be self-dependent. I mean, it depends on your situation. And then the last one we're going to talk about, if we have time tonight, is going to be if you get an inheritance. So someone sent me a question. They received, I felt bad, y'all, because to them it was a sizable amount of money. And to me, I was like, well, that's nice, you know. And then I had to stop myself and I had to say, oh, thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord, that sizable amount of money to them was just, that's nice to me. Okay. So I really do thank the Lord that he has done a work in my life and he has changed things around. And I'm not $845,000 in debt anymore, putting cardboard in my son's shoes, going around to the different stores to try to find free food samples. I didn't have no money for food. Like I thank the Lord that he has brought me up out of the miry clay and he has set me up on a high rock. Amen. Amen. All right. We're going to go to church tonight. All right. So let me talk about these $500 properties. Okay. And so this past week was the Bossier tax certificate sale, Bossier Parish, Louisiana. And for those of you who are new to tax sales, there's 3 different kinds of tax sales. And if you want to pre-order my new book on it, let me know because I'm getting ready to build the pre-order link on Amazon. It's going to be about the 3 different types of tax sales. And I'll send that out. So if you're not in my list already, PM me your email address so I can add you to my mailing list before I announce the book. It's not going to be done as early as I hoped. I wanted it to be done in time for Juneteenth. It's not going to be done in time for Juneteenth, but we're getting there. We're getting there. So anyway, there's 3 different types of tax sales. There's tax liens, tax certificates, and tax deeds. Other than tax certificates, tax liens and tax deeds are pretty evenly distributed amongst all the states. Louisiana is the only one that does tax certificates. And from what I understand, it's like something that goes back to Napoleonic law. I still don't understand the impact of Napoleonic law in Louisiana. But whenever I talk to people about Louisiana, they always talk about how it's crazy and the rules are crazy because they still use that French Napoleonic law, whatever that means. But tax certificates can be real crazy. All right. And so before I talk more about the tax certificate, I want to do a super quick overview of the other kinds of tax. All right. Yes, ma'am. We're going to make sure you get it. Yes, ma'am. Oh, you're going to love it. Y'all, because y'all are about that thing. Y'all are about that business. So I know y'all going to get it. Now, y'all going to love it too. So tax liens in some states like Maryland, where I got my start with tax sales, a tax lien is a lien against the property. And so there's certain ways you can have a lien against your property. The most primary and common way is like when you go buy a property and you don't have enough money and you go to the bank and they give you a mortgage, that mortgage is a lien against the property. So if you don't pay the bank can foreclose on you and they can take back your property. Okay. And because really, until you pay it off, it's their collateral, which kind of makes it their property. Not really, but kind of. All right. And so that's a lien. You can also get a mechanic's lien, like so somebody comes and does work at your property and you don't pay them, or what happens a lot if you're not careful and don't have your documentation straight with the trades, they can say you didn't pay them. Like I had a guy try to put a lien on one of my property in Baltimore that I still have because I'm selling off as much as I can right now so I can invest in Texas. But I had a guy who was trying to put a lien on my property, and I said, "You go on ahead. I'm gonna take you to court because this, and this." I had all my documentation, and everything I had asked him to do was in writing. So you want to make sure you have all your stuff because some people will threaten and they will say that you didn't pay them even if you did. And so that can be a mechanic's lien or a trades lien, a plumber's lien, electrician's lien, whatever your county calls it or parish calls it against your property. Again, if you don't ever pay it and they want to spend the money to take you to foreclosure, they can force the sale of the house to get their money back. Most don't, because it costs a lot to take somebody to foreclosure. But one thing they know, if you sell that house or if you die and your heirs want that house, they go get paid because ain't nobody going to do nothing with that house till the tax liens are paid and the mechanics liens are paid and the mortgage liens are paid. All the stuff has to be paid off. Now there's a specific order, the the carpenter lien may not get paid if there's 20 others in front of them, right? But there's an order of who gets paid when that house sells, and people gonna get paid. Well, the first one to get paid is the tax lien. So in Maryland, you're buying a lien against the house. In order to get the house, you have to take the house to foreclosure. And what normally happens is the bank's going to buy it out, and they are going to recompense you your fees and everything. And then you are going to make the interest, not get the property. But sometimes you get the property. The other one is tax deeds. That's the other very common one. And in that case, you are actually buying that property. In Maryland, you're buying a lien against the property. In Texas, it's a tax deed state. You're buying the property itself. Now, either of these situations, there is a right of redemption. It can be anywhere from 6 months to 8 months to 9 months to 1 year to even 2 years. And in Louisiana, 3 years, okay? And what that means is in Texas, if I buy that tax deed, when I sign that dotted line and I pay my money and they record that down at the courthouse or the land records office or wherever it is they record it, I am the owner of that property. However, the previous owner has up to 6 months to recompense me, give me a set amount of interest. I think in Texas, it's 25%. They have a certain amount of time to come up with that tax money and reimburse me plus the interest. Otherwise, it's all mine. It's actually technically on paper yours, but since they have the right of redemption, a lot of times investors aren't going to do anything to the property until the right of redemption is up. Okay, so that's most states in the union. That's tax liens and tax deeds. Louisiana is a little different. Louisiana does what's called tax certificates. And with tax certificates, what you're bidding on is you're bidding on fractional ownership of the property. Now, when I talk about bidding, this is at the tax sale. Some tax sales, you're bidding on how much you're willing to pay for the property. In some tax sales, you're bidding on how low of an interest rate you're willing to take back in exchange for the tax. So, for example, there was one that I didn't invest in because I saw that all the big name investors were needling the interest down, but they started at 24% interest. And a lot of people from California were coming in and saying, well, they'll take 10% interest, they'll take 5% interest, they'll take 4% interest. For somebody in California, 4% interest is a good investment. It's a good return on their investment. For me, I want 10% or higher. So I was shut out of that one because my bid to win that property, I had to be willing to take the least amount of interest back on my money if the owner redeems, okay? In Louisiana, what you're bidding on in a tax certificate is you're bidding on percentage of ownership. So if you ever wondered, well, how did JJ become 30% owner of a gas station? And how did she become 4% owner of this plot of land or 50% owner of this shooting gallery? Like all those properties that I had in Louisiana when I used to live there. The reason I became part owner of all these things is I bought the tax at tax sale. And in Louisiana, the lowest percent ownership you can get is 1%. And if there's a bidding war, the first person to get to 1% gets the property. Okay. I used to do that. It's no longer aligned with what I want out of the properties because I don't want fractional ownership anymore. I want the whole thing. And so the last couple of months, those of you who have been in my tax sale class, you have seen the look over my shoulder where we've gone through and done the research, and I've shown you how to pull the tax lists for Prince George's County and other counties in Maryland, as well as for Bossier Parish in Louisiana. Those are markets I'm familiar with. Those are places where I'm pretty comfortable making a decision sight unseen because I know the after repaired value of those homes. I would not do a neighborhood that I'm not familiar with unless the price points were so low and I was getting 100% ownership. Like I'm not, other people do, they make lots of money off of it. I'm not going to go on a tax lien on some place that I don't know the neighborhood. A lot of people do and they make good money, but I'm not. Now I will take 100% ownership of something that's low enough, right? And I'm going to get to these $500 houses here in a second. You know, I had a couple flops in there. I'll be honest. I had a couple flops in there, but for the most part, I got some really juicy things. Okay. And I can't wait until everything is filed because then I can actually show you what I got, but I'm going to tell you about what I got today. But I'm not going to tell you the juiciest one because I just want to make sure it's all done, okay, before I talk about it. So what I did in the beginning, I had my research. Those of you who were on the training last week, you saw the properties that I decided I was going after. I lost all of those. I lost all of them because there were other investors who wanted those properties too. And I didn't want to take, actually, I went down to, I think, 51%. I think I went down to 51% ownership on most of those that I really wanted because I kept getting outbid, and turned out because they were willing to go lower and I just wasn't. But there was one, and we didn't figure it out until like 7:45 p.m. Tuesday night. The tax sale was Tuesday, started at 8 in the morning. I had my tabs and I was click bid, click bid, click bid, click bid, click bid, because you got to be first if you want to win it. You got to be first to the percent you want. And then what I did, and what a lot of investors do, is they see what goes in the first flurry in that first hour. And then after that, they do what's called unbids. And that's what I spent the rest of the next couple of hours of that training doing, is walking everybody through. Everybody was looking over my shoulder. You saw live my mistakes and my faults and failures and my joys. Well, one of those properties that I lost actually wasn't the property that I thought it was. Whatever Civic Source did when they generated the file, the links to the properties got mixed up. So I had pulled the actual property itself. I had that up, but their link in my spreadsheet was wrong. So after I did the things that I had pulled up, I went and did a QC on the list of my spreadsheet just to make sure I hit everything. And there was one that hadn't been bid yet. I said, oh, let me bid that. I should have bid that. I can't believe nobody snapped this up. 100%, boom. Y'all, the links were mixed up. And we didn't figure it out till 7:45. We figured out that a lot of the lists, the links were mixed up. So on the data, on the tax record, it was all good. Y'all, this property is the one that's the juicy one I can't wait to tell you about, but I'm not going to tell you about it today. But what I am going to tell you about is there are several. I won 8. I won 8 properties yesterday, and all but one of them were Tuesday. I won 8 properties Tuesday, and all but one of them were $530 or less. And what does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? What this means is, because Louisiana has a 3-year right of redemption, I am the 100% owner of all these 8 properties. Okay. And some of them are land, and some of them have a trailer on them, and some of them have a house on them. And one of them, it looks like that house is really dilapidated and probably needs to be torn down. And if you were in the tax sale training, you heard me walk through the use cases for each one. I remember what Sherman Ragland taught us way back when I got started in Bowie, Maryland. He said, don't ever buy a property if you don't have at least 2 exit strategies. All right. And so preferably 3. But those of you who are on that training, you heard that because you saw me do it live. Now, if you weren't on that training and you would like to get the video of how I walked through and researched these properties to make sure I felt comfortable about buying them, then you can go right now to, what's the link? I don't remember the link. Hold on. Wait, so wait. I have the actual page pulled up here, but what I don't have is the little quick, easy link. You know how you shorten your links? I don't have the shortened link in front of me. I don't remember what it is, but I'm going to go ahead and post it in the chat, okay? The 3-hour marathon from 8 o'clock Tuesday morning till like 11 or 10:50 something. Okay. It's almost 3 hours. That video, those of you who were live, you were in the room when it happened. That video didn't come out. I was using a screen recorder instead of Zoom, so I wouldn't have to lose y'all when I was going back and forth on all the different screens. But I always use a backup recorder. So you do have my audio. If you want to hear that, you're going to get that 3 hours. You're going to get the 2 hours we spent last week. You're going to get the 2 hours we spent last month. And you're going to get the evening session that I did where I walked back through the last remaining unbids, and I recorded both during the group coaching that we did on Tuesday, as well as a little quick evening session once I got back home that night. I had like 45 minutes of the sale left, and I had so many that I didn't even have time to research. But I wasn't going to research until I knew I could get 100% ownership. Because what happens again in Louisiana is I could get 49% ownership, and yeah, that's great, but it's not mine. And if you have a big enough property, like a gas station is a sizable enough property to make it worth the $10,000 for me to go down to the court and have a lawyer file for me to partition the land and me get my partition of that. It's kind of hard to do with an existing structure, but the act of doing that is costly. It costs about $10,000 to $15,000. And so I'm not going to do that on a little, quarter acre with a trailer on it. I'm not going to do that. It's not even worth that. So if you are interested in the training, I just dropped the link in there. It's a Keep page. It has a workshop, Tax Sales 101 registration. Okay. And in that, it's the registration for the initial class we had in April. Once I finish editing everything, and once I finish loading everything into a course, once we get that all done, it's not going to be me. It's probably going to be a team member. That course is going to cost $199. Anybody who is registered or who has paid for the recordings, because the class itself has already happened, you will get it at the $20.24 price. So if this is something you're interested in, don't delay. Get out there before we finish it, all right? Before we finish editing in and uploading everything. We're moving to a new portal, so there's a lot of things that are taking a long time. And because they're taking a long time, I'm letting people share in the benefit. Like, I'm not going to sell you something if I don't know how long it's going to take. I'm not going to sell it at full price because I don't know. It could be a couple months before I get it out. I don't think it is with this one because I'm just going to dump. Right. But some of the ones that we have that are still out there, they're going to take some editing. There's going to take some editing. There's one session I did. I had to do some very serious parenting in the middle of that session. Well, you know what? We need to edit that out. Another one, there was a tree that fell down and there was all these sirens and all these different things. Like, we got to edit those things. And then you can't, you don't just send, some people send stuff to AI or they send stuff to overseas and then they come back and the cuts have like in the middle of your sentence or something. So I'm going to take the extra time and have people do it who are going to do it with quality. But yes, so the training, you'll see that. And if you were on, you'll know which properties I got, because at the very end of that, I walked through every single one. There was one that I probably shouldn't have got, but I had gotten a group. They were all together and I was 100% owner of them for like up until like 8 hours. And I was like right in the last hour, somebody outbid me of the early parcels and I got stuck with the last parcel. And I say stuck, if I'd have gotten all of them, it would have been great. But the last one, I don't know why they didn't take it. I'm going to try to sell it to them. But there's a couple of properties that I've got where one, we can actually put a renter in. Now, you might remember that I said in Louisiana, it is a 3-year right of redemption, which means even though I'm the owner now, well, in a month when they finish all the paperwork, right? It takes a few weeks for them to finish the paperwork. Even though I will be the 100% owner, the other people can come back at any time and they can pay their redemption and they can take ownership back of the property. And so any lease that I execute will have to have a clause that allows the 30 days, 60 days. I'm probably going to put 60 days in there because if I'm the person renting it, I would feel more comfortable about that allows for that to happen. But if the property is vacant, I can put a renter in there. I can make improvements to it. I can redesign it. I can paint it. I can do whatever I want to do. Personally, I'm not doing too much on it because, again, I could do all this work and I could put tens of thousands of dollars into something and somebody can go down to the courthouse and pay $1,000 and redeem their property. And now they get the property with all my improvements. I'm not going to do that. There's 2 of them that I am going, the house is dilapidated on the one. I'm going to post no trespassing on it. And I'm basically going to leave it for 3 years until some investor, and then when it becomes fully mine, it is mine on ownership, but once there's no chance of somebody being able to redeem it, that's what I really need to say. Then I'm probably going to flip it to an investor. So my 500 in that house is going to turn into 15,000, maybe 20,000. They're going to put 10, 15, 20,000 into it, and they'll probably sell it or rent it for even more. They'll make a good profit. There's profit all along the way. The juiciest one, y'all, I can't go into huge detail, but it is 5 parcels of a commercial property that if I get it as my own, I'm debating selling it or using it as an event center. 5 parcels for $3,200. Yep, for $3,200. And it reminded me of the church that me and my son wanted so badly when we first moved back to Louisiana. They had bought it for $10,000 at a tax sale, and they were selling it for $1.2 million. And every year I would go back to them and ask if they're still selling, because it hadn't sold. Will they come down on the price? Will they come down on the price? And it eventually sold for 1.8 off of a $10,000 investment. And I'm doing all of this in my self-directed IRA. So this is tax-free money. The profit is tax-free. Now, this is money that doesn't impact my livelihood, my day-to-day, because when I was younger, I put money into the IRA, and now that I'm retired, I invest out of the IRA. I can't touch it for another couple of years. That gets closer. Like at first I was like, yeah, I can't touch it for 13 years. Like, oh no, wait, actually I could touch that in a couple of years. Oh, we all getting old, y'all. But one of the things that's important to me is I don't need that money right now. I have my health and my strength, and I have my husband. He has his health and his strength, and we are doing the thing. We're making good money with his work and my business, and we've got our military retire. Like, we don't need those things. But later on, if one of us passes away, or later on, if our health starts to fail, or later on, that's when we're going to really need that money. And that's why we're making the effort now to store up in the IRA the properties and the things we need, make that tax-free money, because it's a Roth, and then it'll be there when we really need it and we no longer have the health, strength, or even the desire. Like, even if I have the health and strength to work, imagine I'm always going to do this. Like, I'm always going to have these classes with you. I imagine I'm always going to do that. And I love to travel. So I imagine I'm always going to host conferences all over the world. Like, we already host them all over the country. We've got our eyes set on a couple places in the world that we want to go to have conferences. I'm just not there yet, family-wise, young child and all that. But I can see that. But having to go in day to day, even if we had our health and strength, I think me and my husband would probably rather just travel and speak, travel and minister, travel and enjoy each other and enjoy the fruit of our labor. I think I would love that for all y'all. Okay, so yeah, now with that commercial one, I will give you more details with that when the dust settles. I was not intending to buy that one. Okay, so it wasn't on the list of properties that I'd already put eyes on. Some of you might remember, we did a driving for dollars thing, and I drove out to Louisiana, and I actually went and looked at some of these properties because I don't like to buy things sight unseen. This one came up, and one of the parcels was the parking lot. And I was so excited when it came up like 5 or 6 years ago. It came up in the tax sale. And I was like, oh, I'm going to get this. I'm going to get this commercial building for $500. I was so excited, right? I was going to get this commercial building for $500. And then I looked at it, and it was mislabeled in the tax system. So it wasn't the building. It was the parking lot behind the building. And I was like, oh, I didn't bid on it back then, because what am I going to do with that? I can't enforce that. I could build something else on it, but it's not enough space for me to tear up that concrete and build something else. And so now, and I just kept sitting there in disbelief Tuesday night. I kept telling my husband, like, I can't believe nobody's bid on this. But in the system, it was not marked properly. in the bidding system. It was marked properly in the assessment system, but in the bidding system, it wasn't marked properly. And that's where sometimes as new investors, we feel like sometimes we can't get ahead. Like, you can't compete against the big guys. And I've had some property that I tried to compete against the big guys. And let me tell you something, the big guys got friends in the county or the parish offices, and the big guys got friends that are going to make sure you don't succeed if it would cross one of their friends succeeding. And so I learned that lesson the hard way. I said, oh, I'm not doing this again. And so I'm very excited about it. Again, I won 8 parcels, and other than the expensive commercial building, everything was 536, 556, 550, 550-ish and below. Everything was 550 and below. So like my entire check for eight properties out of my IRA, which, I intended to spend more. Like I had a budget of $10,000, but my entire thing was $5,000, $51.96, something like that. And I got 8 properties, y'all. One of them is a true dog. It's a dog. I shouldn't have done it, but in my mind, I had a great use case for it. But once the dust settled, I was like, I shouldn't have done that. But it's $400. It's not that big of a deal compared to this other stuff that I got. All right, so now let me see what are some pitfalls about doing it like that. Okay, so in Louisiana, it's a 3-year right of redemption, which means I have to pay the tax every year for the next 3 years. So those of you who were in the group coaching Tuesday, you saw me walk through that with this commercial property. Like, here's how much the tax is last year. Here's how much the tax is probably going to be each year in the future. Let's calculate all that out for the next 3 years and make sure that I really want to do this, because it's not just the tax today. It's not just the $500 today. But the cool thing, hey, Dennis, the cool thing is that most of those properties that were like $500, they're so small and so rural that the property tax on them was like either between $34 to $100 a year. I'm like, even with that dog that I shouldn't have got, it was a strip between 2 other properties. And I'm like, oh yeah, I can sell that. I can sell that to the neighbor. The tax is $400. I can sell that to either of the neighbors for $1,000. That's like a 250% rate of return. Like, boom, done. Right. Well, yeah, I probably shouldn't have bought that. I could have put that money elsewhere. But anyway, but when I was going through it, like you have to calculate all that out. And then the other thing is, like, I did not get any land that was well manicured, because if you don't take care of it, the parish, which is what Louisiana calls their counties, the parish will take care of it and they will bill you. And every time they have to go cut your grass because it's overgrown, they're going to charge you like $200. I'm not trying to do that. So I made to look very carefully. Okay, if I'm buying this plot of land, is it attached to a neighbor, or is it being used, or is it being, is it one of those that's not developed? And so like there's a lot of trees or it's a lot of brush. It's already not being taken care of. So nobody's going to come after me to take care of it. Or it's in an area outside of town or on the edge of town where I'm not going to have to worry about that. But I do have to worry about that tax. If I don't pay that tax on that commercial property, and that tax is going to be about $1,400, $1,500 a year. If I don't pay that tax every year for the next 3 years, that will go back to tax sale, and somebody else will get a percentage ownership of that property. So I don't want that to happen. I want the property for myself. And so when I calculated out the costs, if they don't redeem in 3 years, and it does, and then I can have it forever to do whatever I want to do with. I mean, it's mine now. I can do what I want with it now. I can evict now. I can charge rent now. I can do whatever I want with it now. But they have the right to come back within 3 years. And I've had property, y'all. I was so excited. It was one of the first ones I bought. It was a gun shop. It was a gun shooting range, and I was going to turn it into an event center, because back then I was living in Louisiana, and I wanted my church was looking for a building. And y'all, they took it down to 2 years, 11 months, 3 weeks. I could taste the building in my church name on the top. I was already starting to design out what I was going to do with this building. Don't you know, they redeemed it 2 years, 11 months, and 3 weeks out. Good money. It was like 41% interest, but still, and that was tax-free interest because it was in my self-directed Roth IRA, but still I didn't want the interest. I wanted the building. Now, if you've never been involved in a tax sale before, I just want to make sure you know most of the time you're going to walk away with interest. You're going to make interest. You're not going to get the building. But my mother-in-law, my ex-mother-in-law, the very first one she did, she got the building, and it launched what is now today, from them starting off bankrupt into a multi-million-dollar business that's international, y'all. So I love it. I love it. I love it. It's one of my favorite ways for people to get started in real estate investing. And so if this is something that you are interested in, I encourage you to go out now. I'm going to drop the link in the chat again. Please don't ask me to say the short link because I don't remember what it is. And since I'm in a hotel, I'm not going to switch screens and go log into Bitly or Rebrandly to try to figure out what that short link was. Okay. But just go out there, make sure you're registered in my, my mailing list. If you got the announcement for tonight's class, then that link is in that announcement. Okay. But go out there and register and buy your seat before we finish the class and we edit all the things that we've done so that you can actually, no kidding, see it. And then you'll see the use cases that I talk about. But I'm like, people say they can't afford to buy a house. They can't afford to buy real estate. If you will get yourself out of debt and build up enough savings, if you will do the investing in your IRA now, you don't have to get a self-directed IRA just yet, because a self-directed IRA is one where you control the investments. Just open up a Roth. Go to Fidelity or JP Morgan Chase or one of them starts with a V. Go to one of those big brokerage houses and open yourself a Roth IRA and start putting the legal amount in there. And then 10 years from now, you'll have something that you can invest with. And then you can invest with it. You can move that money to a self-directed IRA, invest in that in real estate, and then you can make tax-free money, not just a tax-free loan. I know a lot of people are into that right now, but this is tax-free, hard, cold cash money that when you pass away, your heirs not only get the cash, but they get the property. All right. That's a win-win. I love it. Okay. I don't know what BOA stands for, but definitely not Bank of America. Those big banks, they cheat you when it comes to opening up investment accounts. Okay. So I really highly recommend against doing that. But I don't know what that meant, sir. So if you'll just go ahead and go in there and tell me what you meant, then I can address that. All right. Well, that's the first topic. And wow, I spent much longer on it than I intended to, but it was good. All right. Can anybody out there, now look, somebody who asked about where I can't see it. I can't see the comments now because there's so many this time. But somebody out there who was interested is in California. Okay. Your properties aren't going to be $400 or $500. They might be though, 40 and 50,000. You know what I'm saying? Like, prices are relative. So on Tuesday, I had an attendee in the group coaching who lived in Maryland. I think she actually lives in DC or Northern Virginia, but she was interested in investing in Maryland. And so what we did for group coaching Tuesdays is I wasn't done with the Louisiana tax sale. I walked people through the Louisiana tax sale, and then we paused and we switched over to Maryland. Now I missed the Prince George's County, but I walked her through it. Now those taxes were in the 10s to 50s, but it's also relative to the income out there. So out where I live in rural Texas and in some of these more rural Louisiana places, it's more reasonable that you're going to get these $400, $500, $2,000, $3,000 properties. Okay. Where she was in the DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia, that whole area there, they were looking at, I think the lowest bids that you saw were like 3,000, 5,000. Most were averaging about 8 to 12. Okay. I imagine in California or, like LA or San Francisco or something like that you're probably getting in at the 30 or 40,000. But if you're living out there, you're probably pulling in 10 or so thousand a month. And it's a percentage game. All right. Now, I don't have a pen to write this with, but I don't base what I spend in any category of my life on just the dollar amount. Okay. Because some things are what they are. it's more expensive, honestly, for me to live in Stephenville, Texas, than it was for me to live in Northern Virginia. Like, what? How could that be more expensive? My townhome was real big and it was well built and it was only $1,800 a month. And I lived right where the Beltway crosses I-95. I could get to anywhere I wanted to go, and I could get got my milk and my cheese and my meat from an Amish farmer. And it was more expensive, but that chicken, you get the big old Amish chicken, that thing will last you 3 weeks and not go bad like the stuff from the grocery store with all the injections or whatever they put in it, right? So it was my lifestyle. Life in DC is cheaper. To go out to lunch was $20 a pop in DC area, whereas you can still go to lunch for $7, $9, $10 in Stephenville. But my life, my milk and my eggs and my rent, all of that stuff was actually much cheaper. Okay. But that kind of locality thing aside, I like to base my spending on percentages. And so there's some very established rule of thumbs, they call it, in finance, where, like, for example, for your house, you shouldn't be spending more than a third of your take-home pay to have your place to live. And that includes what you're spending on your rent or your mortgage, including your utilities, your lights, your gas, and all the things, okay? All of that should be no more than a third of your take-home, no more than a quarter, 25% of your gross. And personally, I'd rather it be no more than 25% of your take home, if possible. So what does that mean? What does that mean? If you lose your job and you can't move in with family and you can't find another job after 3 or 4 months, that means you find another place to live. It's hard to do. But if you will live in the percentages, you will not have to worry, because the percentages will always work out. So once you're debt free, one of the percentages that I really like is invest 20% of your take home income or gross, whatever you prefer, but at least of your take home. Okay. If you can, because if you invest for 20 years at 20%, you will make enough money to keep continuing your lifestyle. You will make enough money through your investments in the stock market, or if you're smart about real estate, you will make enough money to make sure that you can always maintain your lifestyle. Okay. And so, yeah, no, sir, I wouldn't get your IRA through Bank of America. I would go through one of the brokerage houses. The banks will offer free financial planners. They'll make you feel like a VIP superstar with a little special room and everything like that. But they really do charge a lot more. And unless you make a ton of money, there's no need for you to pay a ton of money to make more money. Okay. So for most of us with like a 2 million or less net worth, there's really no reason you can't just go out to Fidelity or I keep wanting to say Vandenberg, Vanderbilt. It starts with a V, the Chase, Fidelity, and the V1, whatever it is. There's no reason you can just go get one of those no cost ones. They're no cost. They know that it's not the best product for long term because it's just going to follow the market. And if you invest in better products that have a little more cost, or maybe more managed by someone, you can do better. You can do better over time. But unless you're making enough money to make a difference, it don't make a difference. Okay, that's a whole nother discussion. Okay. It's a whole nother discussion, but please, whatever you do, set up your Roth IRA and start investing in that market now, because even if it's $300 a year, maybe $100 a month, or maybe even $25 a month, even if it's not a whole lot, you do that every year for the next 10 years. And then 10 years from now, when you're ready to invest in real estate, that money will be there. It's the same with any kind of savings. Okay. So what are some percentages that I like people to do? I like people to do 10% in their giving. I always give I'll admit lately I have been waiting until all the other payments come out and all my rent payments come in, and then I've been giving my 10% to the Lord. So I've got to recycle that back and get back to basics. But I usually, I'm telling on myself now. I usually like people to do 10%. I usually recommend 10% to the Lord, to giving, to your faith, and then 20% of your investments, 30% of your housing costs, and then the rest is the rest, whatever it is you want to do with it. If you can live your life, I'm telling you now, money is a numbers game. If you can live your life on 40% of what you bring in, and you're investing 20% of what you bring in, and you're giving 10% of what you bring in, you will always be okay. Always. Because it's a numbers game. All right. Ooh, that was fun. That was fun. All right, let's see, what else was I supposed to talk about today? Because it's almost an hour now. Okay, so I'm going to talk about prenups real quick. And I started to talk about this in the beginning. I didn't even realize, like, I was just talking with this guy, and I didn't realize that me saying this endeared me to him. But most guys did not like it when I talked about financial things. In fact, I don't know, maybe some of the men who are watching today, you can jump on. Everybody complains, and they come to me. They come to me and say they want their wife to be better with money. But you know what they actually don't want? They don't want their wife to be amazing with money. They just want their wife to stop wasting their money. Or they want a girlfriend who is good with money, but they don't really want a girlfriend who's good with money. They want a girlfriend who is okay with money. They really say they want a girlfriend who's they're looking for a woman who's financially secure. They don't really want to, unless they obey to stay at home, play video games, and eat up all the girlfriend's food. They're not looking for a woman who really is good with money. They just want to, they actually deep down inside, and men, y'all can jump in if I'm being too stereotypical on this, but this is what I found when I was dating. And then when I was married, but geographically separated from my husband, this is what I found in running singles groups in 2 different states. So I know that what I'm saying carries some weight, but maybe it doesn't carry weight in all situations, but this is just what I have experienced. What they really, really want is they want somebody who needs them. They don't want a woman who's financially secure and don't need them, unless they're trying to sponge off of her. But what they want is they want somebody who isn't going to take all their money, who isn't going to spend all their money wastefully and recklessly, and isn't going to abuse the grace and the finances with which the man brings to the table. So I don't see any comments on that one. I hope I didn't offend y'all off of my broadcast today, but that's just what I found. That's what I found. So with this dude, I knew this dude and I weren't gonna last. I had run with this guy so many times, just by virtue of my job and where I was. I had seen and heard so many of this guy's dating stories. He would go out with a different girl every Friday night, and then we would hear all about it Saturday. And I knew this guy wasn't going to last. So I was like, just talking and joking. And turned out we actually went out a lot longer than I expected, based on his history of not liking no woman ever being good enough for him. And one of the things that endeared him to me is I talked about a prenup. Well, back then I was just joking, y'all. I was $800,000 in debt. I had prenup for what? What did you want? I didn't have nothing. But as time has gone and as time has progressed, there's been a lot of people who are divorcing and remarrying. Now, when I first got married back in 1997, there were divorces, but divorce wasn't as common as it is now. And in fact, a lot of states, you could only get a divorce with cause for an infidelity, which was hard to prove, not even abuse. Like abuse and rape, those things were not justifiable cause for a divorce back then. And things have changed substantially now. And so what you're seeing now is a huge rise in this whole concept of signing a prenup. So what a prenup is called a prenuptial agreement. It basically says that whatever I brought to the table to the marriage is mine, and whatever you brought to the table before the marriage is yours. And if we split, you don't get any of my stuff. It doesn't become ours when we marry. Only the things that are ours is the stuff we acquired during the marriage, okay? And a lot of times you see this when there's somebody who's very, very wealthy who's marrying somebody who isn't very wealthy. Well, I have a question that came in, and I really identified with this question. I'll explain why in a second. I had a question that come in that They both make about the same, but the man had certain properties, and he wanted his fiance to sign a prenup, and she was very hesitant to sign this prenup because it's like, well, what are you saying? Are you already saying we're going to get a divorce? And I know back in the day, I would have felt the same way, honestly. But now that I'm a little older, I can kind of look at it and think, and this is what I tell my husband all the time. We did not do a prenup because when we got married, I was still like a negative $200,000 of net worth, like whatever, you know. But one thing I built into my life insurance was that a significant portion of my life insurance, my oldest son is beneficiary of half of my life insurance. And when it comes to the properties, certain things, my share of the estate, when I pass away, my share of the estate will be held in trust for the benefit of my children. And when I told my husband, and what I will always maintain is, it's not that I don't trust you. I don't trust who you might marry after me. And so would I sign a prenuptial agreement? I don't know that I would sign a prenuptial agreement, but I don't know that I would immediately take that to mean nothing, that they don't really love you. Okay. Now, there was a radio show that called in that I was listening to, and the guy called in, his wife had passed away, and her family wanted back all the things that they had given her over the years. Now, I thought that was poor class and poor form. Like, he lost not just his wife, but I think he lost like his parents, his wife, and was it also a child? But it was like 3 or 4 people all within the span of 6 months, and her family was breathing down his neck. Like, they wanted her car back, they wanted this and that, whatever that she had given, and they had been married for a couple of years. They didn't get married like 6 months prior. It had been a couple of years, and I'm sorry. If I give my son something, it's his, and he's marries to somebody else, it's theirs. Okay. I can look at those kinds of situations, and I can see like, well, if you've got a family like that, you may love them, but you may not want to be attached to them for the rest of your life. You know what I mean? But I'm not going to say that a prenuptial agreement automatically means that the person you want to marry doesn't love you. There may be some very real generational and familial factors back there, attached to that. Like familial, I mean like the family. Like, there may be things that person has that they only get to have if their family has a comfort level that you're not going to swoop in and take it all. And that may not have anything to do with them. And it's really, really easy to say, if you don't love me enough to not do that, then you don't love me enough to buck against your family. Well, you know what? My husband loved me enough. He did. But what's a really sad thing is to know that your kids don't ever get to have a relationship with their papa. And there's a lot of considerations that go along with that people have bravado, but unless you've lived it, you don't know. You don't know what that's like. And I know that my family would probably say that my perception as a young person probably wasn't true, because I get that a lot, that people say that didn't happen, or this wasn't said. I think they're gaslighting, but who knows? We're not going to know till we get to heaven. But there's a lot that I missed out on because my mom had a black daughter out of wedlock. There's a lot that my sister and brother missed out on. And I don't think we can discount familial ties. Okay. I don't think we can discount the role of the family in our lives. And yeah, it's easy to say love is enough, but honestly, love in a relationship is like exposures to an entrepreneur. Everybody lives for exposures and everybody wants to go viral. But at the end of the day, exposures don't pay rent. And at the end of the day, love doesn't pay the rent. And love doesn't put food on the table. So we want to make sure that we're making sound, smart decisions, because if we are in love, or if the love is there, or if this relationship really is of the Lord, then all the other things will fall into place, whether or not the family is demanding a prenup. Okay. Ooh, if anybody has any question on that, go ahead and drop it in the chat. Yeah, I've really kind of changed my stance on that. But I mean, I didn't have a hard stance on it anyway, because I'm always like, you do you, right? Like, you do you. I think about if my husband ever passed away before me. Now, the men in his family tend to outlive their wives, so I don't think that's going to happen. But if my husband passes away before me, I don't think I would ever remarry. I think the Lord would have to protect me from having boy toys. I don't think I would actually remarry, because I mean, I don't need you to come in here and take away everything that I've built up for myself. I think I just want a companion to go travel with and stuff. I don't know. Anyway, this is getting way off topic. Let me see. I had one more question tonight. Oh, I like this one. Okay. How to spend an inheritance. Okay. So this person received an inheritance of $10,000, and they were asking me how they should spend it. Now, this person has a couple $1,000s of credit card debt. They don't have any savings. Their car is getting ready to conk out, and so it was like, with all these competing priorities, how do we, no kidding, figure out what to do with an inheritance that comes? And the first thing that I would do with an inheritance, if I have the latitude, okay, and let me pause for a second and explain what I mean by that. I have the latitude to make a decision if I'm currently able to pay all my bills. Okay. If I can't pay all my bills, then that's where the inheritance steps in. But we're not going to just blindly use that. First, we have to evaluate the bills. We need to evaluate what we're paying, why we're paying. But if I can't make my rent, or mortgage, or if I can't make my utilities, if I can't put basic food on my table, if I can't cover gas to get to and from work, I call those the four walls: your basic housing, your basic transportation, your basic food, okay, and then also your basic clothing. You have something to wear, right? If I can't cover those things with my day-to-day life, it's time to really reevaluate and shake up my day-to-day life. I don't believe that any of us goes into a situation where we suffer lack, that it isn't intended for our growth. Now, it may have been bad things happening to good people, because that happens, but the Lord works it out for good. But one of the things a wise steward does is take assessment of the situation and takes action. The Bible says that a wise man sees the trouble brewing and they take action. They see it afar off. They're like, ooh, I can see that coming down the line. I'm going to take action now to avoid that. Whereas the foolish keep on going and they're punished. We're seeing that a lot with COVID right now. We're seeing a lot of restaurants are starting to go out of business. Excuse me for just a second. Well, while I'm already paused, y'all like my new mug? It says mama, mommy, mom, bruh. And I saw this mug right after the first couple of times my 8-year-old called me bruh. And I'm like, I'm not bruh, I'm mom. Apparently other mothers have been struggling with this progression of motherhood as well. Anyway, we're seeing this with a lot of restaurants right now. A lot of restaurants are going out of business. And the standard line that everybody's giving is they never recovered from COVID. And I personally, as a financial planner, I have a real hard time with that because of a couple factors. One, COVID in many areas of the country, not all, because there's some areas where people are still wearing masks and people are still having pop-up issues, okay? But for COVID in many areas that I frequent has been over for at least 2 years. The impact of COVID in that local area. For two, there are a lot of things that you can take action in the moment. And there were people like me who was doing the How to Survive COVID series for free financially. It's probably still out there. It's a whole series on how to survive. And I based my series on talking to proprietors who had survived 9/11. So those of you who are old enough to remember 9/11, when the terrorists struck the World Trade Center, everything travel locked up. The hotels locked up. People weren't traveling. Restaurants may have been still okay, but people weren't traveling. The airline industry, all these different things related to airline travel dried up. And so I talked to several proprietors who were involved in that timeline, and what they were doing then was exactly what they were now doing for COVID to prepare themselves and make sure they can weather the storm. And one of the ladies I talked to was someone who ran a Marriott in the town that I was living in at the time. And I'll tell you something, I don't know if they just had good training with all their, I don't know if they're franchisees or if they're individual owners or how that works. But I'll tell you what, when I went to my first conference post COVID in 2001, I think it was, where we went back to Orlando. The Orlando World Center Marriott was investing $41 million in an expansion of their conference center. Don't tell me people didn't know how to weather that storm. Some companies knew how to weather that storm. A lot of us just didn't want to do it. Okay. And so I'm going to answer the question about the inheritance in just a second, but I really want to hammer this home. We have to not just experience life. We have to learn from it and grow from it and take different choices and make better choices and take different directions and take all of this in and allow it to grow us, elevate us, and make us better. If I get to have that event center, like I have a dream to have an event center that's large enough for my entire church's General Assembly. That's a dream I've had for over 20 years now. If I ever have, actually 25 years, actually 1999 is when I first came in contact with another church who does that. And I said, I want to do that for my church. If I was ever to do that, I now am equipped with, here's what you do in a strategy of a situation where everything shuts down and there's no travel. There's nobody filling your event center. There's nobody having events. There's nobody booking rooms. Here's what you do. And what we need to do as individuals in our own families, as individuals in our respective ministries, and as individuals in our businesses, is we need to take these lessons and get them down pat so that we are prepared for the next time. Because I can't guarantee what's going to happen 10 years from now, but I do know 10 years from now, we are going to be fighting something else. There is something else that's going to come along, and it's going to make it difficult for people to live. It's going to make it difficult for people to work. People are going to lose their money, either the stock market or the real estate or whatever it is going to be. There's always something every 10 to 12 to 15 years, always. If you go back and look over history. In fact, one of the pieces that I saw in COVID, it said, if you were 100 years old today, you would have been through all this stuff. Was it like Spanish Americans, a war, the Spanish flu, the World War I, World War II. You would have been through all these things, the stock market crash. Like, you would have been through all these things. And we are going to go through all these things. So it is important to get our house in order. It is important for us to put ourselves and our family on a firm foundation right now. Okay. So to this young man or woman who has the $10,000 inheritance, I didn't go back and ask more questions. You know, sometimes I get the contact information, sometimes I don't, because I do allow people to ask anonymous questions. They did have a significant amount of debt. They didn't say if they can pay their bills or not pay their bills. If you can pay your bills let me rephrase that. Let me start with if you can't. If you can't pay your bills every month, let's sit down and talk about your spend plan, and let's prioritize what you're spending to make sure your four walls are covered. Your basic housing, your basic food, your basic transportation to and from work or wherever it is that you're going to need to earn more money, and your basic clothing. Okay, your basic housing, food, transportation, clothing, basics. And if you just got laid off yesterday, you probably don't need clothing for a few months. You know what I mean? All right, so we'll sit down and plan to prioritize that, and then we start looking at what else, no kidding, needs to be paid. And in my perspective, this is just me. This is just JJ Conway. If you are facing a crisis, you just lost a job, you're facing a crisis, your spouse just passed away, you're facing a crisis, your backyard, I know somebody this happened to, your backyard turned into a sinkhole and it took part of your house with it. Like, if you're facing any of these kinds of things, I'm going to say, take that inheritance and save it. Make no decisions that don't need to be made for at least 6 months to a year. Now, in the case of this $10,000 inheritance, that's not the same as $1 million inheritance, but definitely for a higher dollar amount inheritance, you do not want to do anything you don't have to do with it for the first year. Okay. But if you can't pay your bills, we're gonna figure out how to cover your 4 walls. We're gonna get you on a pro rata plan for everything else, so that every month what you're taking in is the same as what's going out. You're not spending more than you make. Okay. And eventually that will normalize. All right. So that's what we would do in the situation where you can't pay your bills. If you can pay your bills, then I encourage you to walk through the baby steps. Do you have an adequate savings? I know it's really great to go on vacation and go shopping, but I really hate to go on vacation and go shopping and come home and the water heater's busted. And all that extra shopping that I didn't do because I wanted to feel bougie, that I didn't save my money, all that extra shopping that I did because I wanted to feel bougie. Now I come home and I have this water heater. Well, I could have saved some money and not overspent, and then I would have had money to pay this. But I didn't have savings because I deserve it. I'm going to treat myself well. I want you to treat yourself well. I just want you to treat your future self well too. And if you don't have adequate savings, I don't want you going out shopping till you drop it. Because you're going to drop all right. You're going to drop in despair when something goes wrong and you don't have the money to take care of it. And then you're going to come to me and say, well, I had to put this on the credit card. You don't have to do anything. You choose to do what you do. You choose to do what you do. And you made a series of choices. And at any point along the way, you could stop and say, I'm not going to make the next bad choice. But what most of us do is we buy into the sunk cost fallacy. We're like, we already done put too much money into it. We already come this far. I can't change it now. We can always change it. Always. We can always change it. All right. This poor person's gonna be like, this is not what I asked about. That's okay. Your question is allowing me to help somebody else that really needed to hear it. All right. So if you can pay your bills on your existing income, when you get this inheritance, I recommend that you take and put something into savings. If you're in debt, I would recommend at least 1,000 to 1 month of expenses in your savings. Okay. If you're out of debt, I would say go ahead and see if you could even bump it to 3 months, maybe even 6 months of savings. Okay. Because if the way the baby steps are, first, you get a small savings account, 1,000 to maybe your 1 month of expenses, so that when the check engine light comes on, or you bust a tire, or one time I was driving, y'all, and this brick comes flying out of the truck in front of me and crashes into my windshield. Like I thought it was going to hit me. I almost ran off the road. It was ridiculous, y'all. It was ridiculous. And then what was even worse was a truck pulled in front of the truck I thought it came from. It didn't come from the truck in front of me. It came from a truck that was on the other side of him. Yeah, it was ridiculous. And so I was like, oh, that's why the people in the truck next to me were looking at me with like horror on their faces, because they dodged it and it hit me. So, I mean, when stuff like that happens, you got to have a little savings or padding. Otherwise, most of us are going to go right back into debt. I didn't go into debt getting that windshield fixed. In fact, I didn't get it fixed for a long time because nobody believed me that it actually happened. And I wanted a reminder that I wasn't crazy, because I had a real bad car accident that ended my military career. My mind wasn't the greatest, So whenever something like anytime I said something that was a little out of the norm, people thought I just made it up. So that was a really tough time in my life. So it took me a long time to get that thing fixed. But I was like, I'll never forget. I can still visualize that brick coming to my windshield. But when stuff like that happens, you want to have a padding so that your bad day becomes an irritation, not a, oh no, what am I going to do? It's just like, this is frustrating. Okay. I'd rather you be frustrated and have the money in the bank to take care of it than to be stressing out because you're going to have to choose now to fix your windshield or feed your kid. I've been there. I don't want you to go through that. All right. The next step in the baby steps is going to be getting out of debt. And I know a lot of people disagree with me on this. I find it interesting, the number of people who disagree with me about getting out of debt, and they will cite some financial planner out there. And I'll be like, in my mind, I'll be like, I know that person in person. They live a debt-free lifestyle. They'll teach you about debt. They'll teach you about debt, how to leverage debt, because they know that that's what sells. Everybody wants the easy button. Everybody wants to get, everybody wants to push a button and become a millionaire tomorrow, right? And so they know that that's what sells, and they'll teach you how to do it. And they know that people like this fallacy of math, like, oh, I'm gonna leverage all the credit card interests, and I'm gonna come out ahead. And they know, because we've had the conversations one-on-one, that if you cared about math as much as you pretend to when you're trying to getting out of debt, when you're trying to get out of the need for me to tell you get out of debt, they know that if you cared that much about math, you wouldn't be in debt anyway. Because what do financial planners call interest? They call it a penalty. It's a penalty we pay for not being patient. It's a penalty we pay for being undisciplined. It's a penalty we pay for using somebody else's money. All right. And they don't like to waste money. If you ever talk to real financial planners, real financial people do not like to waste money. All right. So I would recommend getting out of debt, and we can put together a strategy for you how you can do just that. The next thing I would recommend is your 3 to 6 month savings account. And if you have this inheritance, again, I am not saying do all this tomorrow. Initially, you're going to park that money and leave it alone for 6 months. You inherit a house, you inherit a car, you inherit any of these kinds of things. Yeah, you want to keep the car running, get the oil changes on it. Yeah, you want to, make sure the mortgage is still getting paid on that house if there is one. But don't sell the house in a huff. Don't do, I remember someone, I got to make up different things so you won't know who I'm talking about. But let's just say her husband had a yacht. He didn't have a yacht. He had something that cost as much as a yacht. But let's just say, for purposes of discussion, her husband had a yacht. Some guy came and sweet talked to her. She just gave it to him. Just gave away this and gave away this and gave away this and gave away. The woman gave away millions of dollars of stuff in her grief. And I don't want you to make that mistake. Okay? So, so once the dust has settled and the feelings have been felt and the processing has happened, then we move forward with the things that I'm recommending you. But for the first amount, park that aside and just allow yourself to grieve and allow yourself to seek, what would this person have me to do? Okay. So after we're out of debt and after we have our 3 to 6 months account, then the next thing that I'm going to recommend, normally in a normal situation, I would recommend that you start investing 15 to 20% of your income. If you're, you make sure you bump up those contributions at work so you get all the matches, get your self-directed IRA if that's you're interested in doing real estate or something, or just a regular IRA, but make sure it's a Roth version so you're paying tax on it now, but you don't have to pay tax on the earnings later, right? And then if you have kids, start saving up for their college education. Like, I recommend you would do all of that after you're out of debt and you have a big 3 to 6, or in some cases 12-month savings account, okay? But if you are dealing with inheritance money, I think it's important to kind of ask yourself, what did the person who left me this want me to do with it? I'm not saying you have to. You don't have to. You can do whatever you want with it. It's yours. But it might be nice to consider, what did this person want from me, if anything? Maybe they wanted you to get outside your comfort zone and get a degree in something that you always wanted, but you felt like it wasn't practical. Maybe they wanted to give you a treat, let you travel on a nice vacation because you're always working so hard for everybody else. Okay. You can't pay your bill. Now, don't hear what I did not say. You can't pay your bills and you get a $10,000 inheritance. That $10,000 inheritance better not go to a trip. Okay. If somebody wants you to have a trip, ask them to book it for you. Because if you can't pay your bills, you need to pay your bills. We need to get you solvent. Okay. But just think about what they might have wanted. Maybe they wanted to give you seed money to start your own business. Maybe they wanted to get you seed money. I just don't know. But I would take that step in asking yourself in prayer, asking the Lord in prayer to reveal to you, thinking and meditating about what this person might have wanted. And I would allow that to I would allow yourself the choice of whether or not to honor that wish or not. Okay. A lot of times inheritances come and you don't know what they wanted you to do. And then you would just keep following the baby steps. So you get out of debt, you get a little savings, get out of debt, get a bigger savings, start investing, Save for college if you've got kids for college, pay off your house, get completely out of debt, and then invest more and give more and do good in the community, start a foundation or do the things that you might want to do. That's really a really quick summary of what you would do with money, but I wouldn't treat inheritance money any different than I would treat extra income on my crazy spend plan or extra income that comes into my life. I would step through the baby steps just like I would with any other dollars that are in my life. Okay, well, I guess that's it for today. Does anybody have any questions that you want me to answer? I am hoping somebody might be like, well, geez, she's on a mini vacay. Why is she downstairs teaching this class instead of up in family movie night? I am hoping that the little one has fallen asleep by now. And I know if I'm in the room, the little one's going to want to snuggle with mama. And he's going to want to snuggle and snuggle and snuggle. And it's going to take forever for him to get to sleep because he's just going through some weird stage right now where he just really is clingy to mama. So that's what I'm doing. And I'm happy to talk if you are. But if y'all don't have anything, I will go ahead and work on my paperwork for those 8 properties that I got. 8 properties, y'all. 100% ownership for $5,100, $5,200. I'm loving it. I'm loving it. I'm loving it. Real estate is the jam. If you want to learn how you can do things like that with real estate, these aren't properties that I went on the MLS and said, I want to live here. Okay. When you're investing this way in real estate, you get what you get and you don't throw a fit, right? You leverage those properties into what you really want, right? But if you want to learn how to do all those, make sure you're on our third Thursdays. Every third Thursday, we do real estate. And if you're not able to be on live with the third Thursdays, you can buy into the class that we do where we put all of that coursework in, as well as the follow-on workshops to each topic, okay? So we just wrapped up our tax sales deep dive, and we had a foreclosure consulting deep dive, and we're going to be doing a part 2 of the foreclosure consulting deep dive. Now that one I do know the link to, and I can post that here. I do know the easy link to that one is jjclink.com/FC. I know that one. We did part 1 of that already. We're going to be scheduling part 2 soon. But if you this is how people go from having nothing to multimillionaire in just a short time. Okay? You can do it. I want you to know that you can do it. You absolutely can do it. You don't have to be poor always. Maybe you're a 6-figure earner today and you know that you're doing all right, but you know that you could be doing a little bit better. These are the ways that you could be doing better. If you have a property that's free and clear because you only paid $500 for it, can you help a single mom achieve her dream of home ownership and profit at the same time? Absolutely, all day long. You can take if you get a property for $600, you can have somebody rent to own that thing for $200 a month. And you've recouped your money in 3 months. And over the course of their 30 years paying for that property, you will have made a lot of money and felt good about it. They will have made a lot of money below market value because they will have bought the property and they will have achieved all that equity. It is a win-win. Real estate is one of those business ventures that is a win-win-win. And you absolutely can do it. All right, y'all. I'm JJ Conway. I want to thank y'all for watching. That's all I've got for you today. Y'all take care and be blessed.